shit!
Wow guys, intense and powerful earthquake today in Taiwan again. Taiwan Meteorological Agency has it at 7.0. The USGS has it at 6.6, 6.7. So something in that range, and the tremors were felt across the region as far as Hong Kong. But what is happening there? We will talk about this in this video. I'll show you videos of the shaking, and we will also look at the plate boundaries and the tectonic settings there, because many of you have asked me already. You sent me, oh, there's an earthquake. Is this a foreshock for a bigger one? Because we just had on December 24th the 6.1 earthquake in Tainan. So is this connected, guys? We will have to look at that. What is coming for Taiwan, or is there something coming for Taiwan? The tremors that were happening today were shaking Taipei, and they reached Hong Kong, and facilities were evacuated following this offshore quake. The ground began shaking without warning late Saturday, December 27th at Taiwan's northeastern coast. And they got the full force of this, how Taiwan says, magnitude 7 earthquake. It has rattled buildings across the capital of Taipei, has sent the tremors rippling towards Hong Kong. Residents in Taipei watched their chandeliers sway. They felt the floors rumble beneath their feet as this powerful, powerful earthquake was striking roughly 23 miles, 30 kilometers off Yilan County. And this, we have to say, guys, for this area, it's the island's most significant seismic event since last year, the devastating April 2024 earthquake that has unfortunately led to the loss of 19 people.
Shit.
And Taiwan's weather administration has now confirmed that the quake happened at a depth of roughly 73 kilometers, roughly 59 miles, and they set the intensity rating 4. So a little less than the December 23rd earthquake, although the magnitude here was higher, but it was deeper. It wasn't as shallow. So it has potential for more damage. We know that the towers were swaying in Taipei. Office workers and residents in the towers, they braced themselves, and they didn't know, right? It was big uncertainty. What would the shaking do? Would it intensify even further, or would it subside within seconds? So despite this powerful tremor, and this is a good thing, no major damage reported so far. The fire department of Taiwan has confirmed that there's no major damage across the island, despite how they say the earthquake's significant magnitude. The intensity classification of 4 says it's moderate shaking that causes significant movement of indoor objects, and of course will wake up sleeping people. And again, I want to say this happened in the darkness, because if you look at social media, there's so many videos scrolling around saying this is today's earthquake, but they're during daylight, so it's not today's earthquake. It's really, really difficult because the internet right now is being swamped by so many fake posts and channels. It's really not fun anymore. So be very, very careful what you watch. Intensity 4 thankfully typically results in limited structural harm of well-constructed buildings that are up to code. In Yilan County, more than 3,000 homes briefly lost electrical power, but they were quick to re-establish this. No tsunami alert this time for this quake, because the epicenter and the depth, it was deep enough beneath the ocean floor to prevent like rapid seafloor displacement that usually generates these dangerous tsunami waves. So for coastal communities, they avoided the panic and the evacuation procedures that usually follow when we have a shallow offshore earthquake with greater tsunami potential, like on December 23rd. But it did have some effects. I mean, Taiwan, we know, it's famous for chip making semiconductors. So TSMC, that's Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, the world's largest contract chip maker, has evacuated their employees from several facilities in Hsinchu Science Park, where the company has the headquarters. And they just wanted to be careful, right? They say they want to prioritize the safety and the health of their workers. But the problem is, right, Taiwan is so seismically active, and then the whole world relies on their production there. So, and it is clear, let's say there was an even bigger earthquake with more even infrastructure damages. The authorities are telling us, and we know that any extended production stoppage at that plant, at TSMC facilities, could ripple through global technology supply chains. So that's why I'm always saying the critical stuff that we need, we should produce this in our own countries, don't you think, guys? Especially since this sits in Taiwan on that complex tectonic setting. Not to mention the conflict between Taiwan and China, right? So also Hong Kong. Tremors were reaching Hong Kong, far beyond Taiwan's borders. Residents in Hong Kong reported feeling tremors that lasted several seconds. The Hong Kong Observatory received more than 100 reports from people who experienced the shaking. And that, you see, guys, how these major events can impact areas hundreds of miles away from the epicenter. And this was a major event. Hong Kong is roughly 800 kilometers, like 690 miles away from Yilan County, yet the earthquake's magnitude generated seismic waves that were traveling. They were strong enough to produce noticeable shaking in the high-rise buildings across the city. And residents in upper floors of tall structures typically feel like distant earthquakes more intensely than the ground level occupants due to building sway, amplifying tremors. And I can confirm that. I have lived through 2 4-point-something earthquakes here in Canada. I've made videos about this. I was sitting on my couch, and that was actually, it was high up in a tower, and the couch felt like, I just felt for a moment I'm being lifted up and I'm coming back down. It was really, really strange. So it has global impact. That's what we can say, right? And the geological position of Taiwan and the earthquakes that happen there do definitely create seismic risks for neighboring countries and territories. And we have earthquakes in Taiwan quite often, especially if there's a major earthquake near Taiwan. They frequently generate tremors that are felt across southern China, the Philippines, and other nearby regions that are positioned along active fault lines. Taiwan sits, unfortunately, near the junction of 2 tectonic plates, where the Philippine Sea plate converges with the Eurasian plate. And that's why Taiwan is extremely prone to earthquakes, because these tectonic forces that are happening there, they're building stress along the fault lines before they release that energy through seismic events. And Taiwan experiences hundreds of earthquakes every year, though most are too small to cause damage or even to be felt by residents. And major quakes that would be capable of creating a lot of damage and loss, structural harm, they're less frequently, but unfortunately they are constant threats for the country. That's why they are trying to prepare as good as they can, have building codes designed to withstand powerful tremors. They have early warning systems, reinforced construction standards, and regular disaster drills. And we've seen this in some videos. I'll show it to you here where you can actually hear it. So before the shaking starts, the guy already has the earthquake warning on his computer. And also in another video, you hear the earthquake warning going off. So it seems they had a few seconds. And then if you look at the animals, I don't know, first I thought that's sheep, but then I thought, no, they look like gigantic guinea pigs or something like this. I know the name doesn't come to my mind what these are, but look how they react. They're a little bit uncoordinated. So I don't see like a mysterious reaction that they knew it ahead of time when I watched that video. But guys, important, what we need to talk about this, because this was a question that many of you ask. It seems you've seen that somewhere else on social media. Could this be a foreshock? Could these two earthquakes be connected? The December 23rd and the December 27th earthquake. Well, they both happened in Taiwan, but there's a huge difference. Today's quake is almost 60 miles deep offshore near Yilan. The December 23rd Taitung quake was very shallow, only like 7 miles deep, 12 kilometers on land in southeast Taiwan. And today's earthquake likely involved a deeper plate interaction or a subduction related process that was happening offshore. December 23rd was a shallow crustal event related to on-land collision faulting. That's why seismologists treat them as different kinds of events and associate them with different parts of Taiwan's very, very complex boundary systems. So yeah, of course, it can always be a foreshock, but really, guys, most of the time it isn't. And the scientifically honest answer right now is we cannot know yet, but most likely not. We cannot say if something was a foreshock at the time that we are now. It's only defined in hindsight, right? If a larger earthquake happens soon after in the same source region, then yeah, today's quake could get relabeled as a foreshock. If not, it remains the main shock. That's standard seismology practice. It's a strong quake that happened today near Yilan. So the depth of the earthquake, 70 to 73 kilometers deep, roughly 60 miles, suggests an intermediate depth event in the plate interaction system northeast of Taiwan, not the shallow Taitung style crustal faulting that we have seen on December 23rd. Public messaging so far tells the residents stay alert for aftershocks, especially in the next few hours or in the next 2 to 4 days. The Taitung earthquake on December 23rd, it was very shallow, and that is characteristic of crustal faulting in the collision zone between the same plates on land. And that here in this area is specifically the longitudinal valley system that is in southeastern Taiwan. Today's earthquake probably has occurred within a subducting slab or plate interface between the overriding plate. Depth suggests involvement of a subduction system where the Philippine Sea plate is being forced beneath the Eurasian plate, and all that is happening near the Ryukyu subduction zone that is north of Taiwan. That is capable of something big. So it looks like we're dealing with different animals. The depth and location information that we have from today's earthquake, if we combine that with tectonic models, give us the hint that it's a different plate boundary area than the Taitung quake. Different parts of Taiwan's complex boundary systems. Active boundaries, the Eurasian plate and the Philippine Sea plate, they are converging. They create, of course, we've talked about this, intense collision, subduction, and faulting, and they're forming Taiwan's mountains like the Central Range. The Philippine Sea plate's Luzon arc like slams into the Eurasian continental margin with tectonic activity seen in the northern subduction, Philippine Sea plate underneath the Eurasian, and the southern subduction, the Eurasian plate underneath the Philippine Sea. So north and south have some different tectonic dynamics. And today we were north and December 23rd was south. North Philippine Sea Plate subduction dives beneath the Eurasian Plate along the Ryukyu Trench. In the south, the Eurasian Plate's South China Sea crust subducts beneath the Philippine Sea Plate along the Manila Trench. And in central Taiwan, the collision between the Luzon volcanic arc that is part of the Philippine Sea Plate and the Eurasian continental margin, that's like the Chinese margin, creates this dramatic uplift of the island with a longitudinal valley fault system, and that is marking this main zone. And in southern Taiwan, for example, we had a strong earthquake in 2016. Over 100 people were lost. And 1999, 7.3, more than 2,000 people were lost. So this is a dangerous area where we can all along in this area, we can see something bigger for sure. And it depends on the depth, it depends on the location of the epicenter, whether the quake is very damaging, or thankfully, like today's quake, it looks not so damaging. So I will keep you updated, guys. I hope you liked that video, and there's so much more, guys. We have news from 3i Atlas, because now is the interesting phase. From now until March, we're getting the data in. We're extracting the data that have been collected while it was closest to Earth, and the mystery remains. More questions than answers, and I think you should have a look. Subscribe, like, and hype this video, guys. If you want to support the channel, link is in the description. You can fill me up with coffee, and I hope I see you in a second if you click here in the next one. Bye bye.